This week, a Missouri state lawmaker compared a woman's decision to terminate her pregnancy to buying a car.
Do you not trust your sisters to make the decisions for themselves?
Well, yesterday I went over to the car lot over here. I was just going to get a key made for the vehicle. And I was looking around because I'm considering maybe buying a new vehicle. Even when I buy a new vehicle, this is my experience again, I don't go right in there and say I want to buy that vehicle and then you leave with it.
That was Missouri State Rep. Chuck Gatzenberger right there, arguing for a 72-hour waiting period because you really got to kick the tires before you decide to get an abortion. The former U.S. Senator and current head of top conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has some interesting ideas about the federal government's role in ending slavery. Here is how DeMint put it to a Christian radio show last week.
No liberal is going to be able to win a debate that big government freed the slaves. In fact, it was Abraham Lincoln, the very first Republican, who took this on as a cause, and a lot of it was based on a love in his heart that comes from God.
Abraham Lincoln, the President of the United States, which I believe is a federal job, the man who wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, who ordered slaves in Confederate states freed. But here's the thing, that Emancipation Proclamation made effectively no difference until the end of a massive government undertaking known as the Civil War. And Jonathan Chait, who has a massive piece in New York Magazine, which has, again, been hotly debated, but one of the things that he writes that I agree with is that effectively, racial conservatism and conservatism used to be similar things. Now they are effectively the same thing. And I think no other person bears this out better than Rush Limbaugh. I must play a choice piece of sound from Rushbo today. Let's take a listen to it.
So the first African-American president has, sadly, resorted to exacerbating racial tensions. And he's got an attorney general who is helping him.
Jamel, the country's first African-American president is exacerbating racial tensions, presumably because he's talking about LBJ's civil rights legacy.
Yeah, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, right? That, like, talking about race is exacerbating racial tensions, and
yes.
In which case we can't really talk about anything, right? Like, we can't talk about income inequality because talking about income inequality means talking about the racial wealth gap. And I guess if President Obama were to talk about the racial wealth gap, then I guess he's exacerbating race. It's this bizarre turn of phrase that I think Chait does capture very well in saying that for a large segment of the right, perhaps most of the right, there's been a complete melding of, ideological conservatism and this racial conservatism, which holds that any mention of race is almost, if not equivalent to racism, and that the only way you can approach American life is colorblind, as if racial inequalities are these things that vanished when Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream and marched.
Right, Anna, apparently you are only allowed to talk about race insofar as it pertains to Abraham Lincoln, or if maybe you're running for Senate in Iowa, because this is what U.S. Senate candidate, not state Senate, U.S. Senate candidate Sam Clovis said. Speaking of this president, he said, "It is not that what he has done would not rise to the level where it might be impeachable. We now have a situation where race is thrown into the cards as well." And that he says effectively the Republicans in the House would like to impeach this president. They just cannot because they're too worried about the racial implications.
We talked last week about how the Republican advice to single women that don't vote for them is to become married women who might vote for them. There is definitely a parallel here. I think the only way that these conservatives can be satisfied by the behavior of a black person in the public eye is for that person not to be black. I mean, the president, by the definitions that Rush Limbaugh uses, by the definitions of the people that talk like the senator or the senatorial candidate in Iowa, Barack Obama's very existence exacerbates racial tensions. And it does, actually.
If we do have a female president one day, you can bet your bottom dollar that our issues around gender will be brought into the open like never before. Your thoughts this week in summation? I know we're not quite at Friday, but we had Nancy Pelosi's head photoshopped onto a twerking Miley Cyrus. We had a raging debate about pay equity in which Lynn Jenkins said about paycheck fairness, "Many ladies I know feel like they're being used as pawns." Are we getting any more closer to a perfect union?
Well, I think I'm an arc of history bends towards justice type person. I am glad that we're talking about these things. I think the first female president will exacerbate gender tensions in the way that the Republicans don't like, but in the way they kind of have to be talked about if we're going to make progress. So I look forward to that day. I hope it might be in 2000. Ooh, what would it be? 17. All right.
Yes, theoretically. Anna Marie Cox and Jamel Bowie, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.